medications. She stopped breathing in her sleep, and she gets diagnosed with shaken baby syndrome.
You feel like a lot of the new evidence that has been released as of late, you even talked about the stuff that came back in the fall, do you think that's being ignored as of today?
I can't speak to that. I know that when we filed in October, in the shadow of a looming execution date, it is unthinkable that the volume of evidence we've submitted could have been thoroughly considered and vetted in that amount of time. And I know that the court's own decision said they did not consider the merits. So they relied on a procedural bar that I don't understand and was not explained in the decision. But certainly now, here we are with yet more new evidence since October, and they have taken their time. That should mean something. But now this added variable, the stress of an execution date, it makes no sense. It's not the law, and it's not moral.
Nikki's brother said that exact same thing about her little head, and that the nurse was crying, who had to shave her little head and saw the back of her head. Can you clear that up for us?
I would very much like to, because the reason the nurse shaved her head was because they could not see anything wrong with this child, except that her lips had turned blue. And she was obviously unconscious. There was no blood. There was a tiny abrasion on her chin and a small bruise on the side of her face. They shaved her head looking for some other indication, and they found a single bump on the back of her head, which our experts have referred to as a goose egg. You've seen the cartoon. Someone hits their head, they get a bump. That is the body reacting to an impact. But it was so minor, there wasn't even a hairline fracture. How do we know this? CAT scans were taken of Nikki's head soon after she was resuscitated. Those CAT scans were locked up in the basement of this courthouse for 15 years. The jury didn't see them. The jury never heard anything about the minor bump and the small amount of subdural bleeding associated with that. They heard massive brain injury from shaking. Now, what the medical examiner saw 2 days later, after massive intervention, was far more blood inside her head. The blood wasn't there when the CAT scans were taken, and there were no broken bones, no cuts, etc. You cannot bash in a skull and have no fractures, no blood. That the family, the other side of the family, is being fed that information is a serious problem. That is manipulating the pain of the other side of Nikki's family. But I also do take issue, and I'm sorry again if I'm preaching here, but the victim here is Nikki. She was a victim of so many things. She was a victim of her complex medical history not being understood. Poor child on Medicaid. She was somebody who, though, was loved by two sides of a family after being essentially abandoned by her birth mother. The victim's family isn't only one side of the family. Robert's family is Nikki's family too. And I really think this has not been emphasized enough. Robert was granted custody of this child 2 months before she died by agreement. Who would agree to let the father have full custody of a child if you thought there was anything wrong with this man, if he was any danger to this child? And if you look back at Robert's record, this is a man who never had any history of violence towards anybody, let alone a vulnerable child. He volunteered for paternity testing so he could be held responsible. How often does that happen? So I'm glad that there's a record of someone saying in public, because I've seen it on lots of social media, that people are saying things about what happened to this child that are verifiably false. And I'm talking about the state's own medical records, those CAT scans, Harvard-trained medical radiologist, who is the only one to look at those, saying one small bump tissue swelling, small subdural bleed, no fractures. And of course, if this were a battery case, there would never have been a shaken baby diagnosis. That is the fundamental origin of this thing. It's an explanation for what seems inexplicable. But it's been falsified by the actual study of biomechanics, which looks at how does human injury happen. The biomechanical engineers have debunked this theory, and we're just not listening to them.
CCAs, historically, how long can they take?
I mean, there's no, before there was an execution date, the idea is the court should have breathing room and not have these external pressures. There are no deadlines, but now there is a deadline.
Is it going to impact it negatively to have this deadline?
Yes, I mean, the trauma of an execution date is nothing but negative.
Well, will it impact the Criminal Court of Appeals decision to have an execution?
I don't know. I don't know how they will feel about having this external pressure. I don't think that's something that they would share with us as a member of the public. But if you just think about it, the difference between let us take the time to review the evidence and make an informed decision versus now we have 91 days.
Why this venue today for this decision?
This is what the state filed a motion, and the way that works, it goes back to the convicting court.
Okay.
So that's just standard practice. The only time an execution date gets set is by the judge in the convicting court. Now, the judge who actually presided over this trial is no longer with us, and there was a new judge assigned who voluntarily recused herself in November. Judge Jackson was assigned apparently in February. Again, I wasn't served with notice of that, despite the order itself saying as soon as practicable, notify the parties. I learned about, what was it done, a week or two ago, that we had a judge. So this is another problem. There just has not been transparency around virtually anything about this case. And then back to that question, one jury who heard virtually nothing that has ever been developed since 2016, and what we have are these procedural bars to getting at the truth and reviewing the evidence. That is not the way we should handle the most serious of cases, in my opinion. All right, I've got to go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, and please stay with us. Stay with Robert.
All right, everyone. Well, that was Gretchen Sween, the attorney for Robert Roberson.